welcome. Ivo, it's really good to see you again. We last connected on that conversation that resonated with so many people, where you had some amazing insights. You said, I'm just going to go and experiment with things and see. And what I loved about that is that I followed the teachings of Abraham Hicks, and Abraham says, words don't teach. And they laugh about it. They go, words don't teach. It's odd we use so many. They do use a lot of words. But they say words don't teach. Only your own life experience can teach you. So even you read these things and you hear what Abraham says and Sydney Banks says or somebody else says, you're reading this, you're like hearing this, but it's concepts. They're not anything you know unless you are experiencing. You are experiencing that, then you do know it. If you are not experiencing, you hear, oh, we have innate well-being. Well, do you have well-being? Are you experiencing well-being? Well, no, I'm in turmoil. Okay, so then you don't know it. So it's there. It's in the teaching. It says that that's what it is. But you need to see the truth. The truth will show up in your experience because it's true. And so that's what fascinated me when we first connected. And I noticed you were just doing your own experiment and then having insights. And that was very powerful. I think a lot of people resonated with that in our last conversation. So, yeah.
I'm glad they did. I think it's a powerful thing for me, at least, to get away from, because I spent so much time trying to understand these concepts and reading about them, like you said. And the more I read, the more like, okay, this makes sense, but I still feel the same way. Nothing's changed. Even though the coaching I've had moments where things have gone really well, but then I revert back to my default state of being. Nothing really changes on a substantial level. So I was like, what can I do? That's what I started experimenting. The strength thing was one aspect of it. Currently where I'm at is I'm experimenting with my mental health. What can I do with it? I've managed to actually change something permanently in the way I see things, almost by accident, by going out and taking action and having a framework around it. Was quite interesting. It started out as I just want to become more social, saying hi to people. Then it ended up being a whole thing of where else could I do this in my life? This is the only area. Where else can I change my perception? Because I found that I would listen to Sydney Banks. I would feel really good. That aloha feeling you get by listening to him. And I would feel a moment of calm and being okay. And then I would go back to my normal life and stop listening to him. And then I would revert back to how I was before. So I'm like, something is wrong here. Like, why is it not sticking with me? Why do I have to constantly listen to it to get that feeling? These are the questions I was sitting with. And I started to see that I've tried to understand the three principles, but it never led to any significant, more permanent change that, okay, even in my lowest lows, I still would feel good, that kind of thing. Even if I'm disappointed in something, I would still not take it as hard as you take it before. So I started to look into that stuff as well. It'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, this is great. I'm so fascinated and interested in seeing, like, especially when you talked about things which felt like a permanent shift, a permanent change is where there's a true seeing of something. You can't unsee what you saw. So it's kind of like a permanent change when you see it and you see the truth of the thing, then it's hard to revert back because you can't pretend this isn't there. Those are really powerful or deep insights, what people might point to as they're transformational, because that realization changes you permanently. You're no longer the same person.
Yeah. So when I came to my country, Bulgaria, right, to focus on my career. Yes.
Because you moved back since we last spoke, I think, right?
I think when we last spoke, I was still in England and I was planning to move.
To move. Okay.
Yeah. I moved here, and for some reason I had this notion that Bulgarian people are more judgmental than people in England. So I came here and just walking around. The city is not as packed as London. There's less people and things like that. But I felt very anxious and I didn't know many people. I was kind of getting frustrated. I was like, I know the three principles, right? I've been around it for a couple of years and I'm in my own city, my hometown, and I'm feeling like this, right? It wasn't like a one off where 9 times out of 10 I would feel good and not anxious. And one time
Yeah.
I'd feel anxious. If it was that, fine, it happens. But for me, it was the opposite. 9 times out of 10, I felt anxious. And one time I felt good or no anxious. So I was like, something is up here. I want to change that. I don't want to feel like, right? So I said to myself, what steps can I take? I decided to start saying hi to people. The first time I did it, oh my God, it was like, I don't know how to describe it to you. It's very frightening. Just to say hi to someone, it literally scared the shit out of me. What is this? I was walking around for 1 hour trying to muster up the courage to do it. That was the whole idea of it. And I was beating myself up for it because I was like, I got to do it. But my adrenaline was going through the roof. It was a very intense experience. Eventually, I mustered up the courage to do it. I saw a nice looking woman. I was like, you know what? I've been walking around for an hour. I just got to do it. I committed to it. I was like, I'm going to do it. I ended up doing it. My heart was pumping. And I remember that situation very specifically. I remember what she was wearing, what it was. She was on the phone. I remember how nervous I was. And I was like, okay, I did it. I pat myself on the back. And I started to do it, right? I started to do it daily. But what I started to realize is there were moments where I started to burn out. My nervous system was too overloaded with stress. So I was like, okay, I need to adjust to that. If I do it today, I would rest tomorrow. I went through that process for about 2, 3 months. And I got to a point where I could comfortably say hi to anyone without
Mm.
getting the adrenaline response. I'm calm. I can open up. I can say hi as if I'm saying hi to you, someone that I know. But I got to that point by actively asking myself, where am I right now? What is my current state? How will I show about when I want to say hi to someone? Well, I was very nervous. Okay, what is the first step I can take? And where do I want to go? Not what I don't want, but what do I want?
Mm.
And I started to focus on that. And I was like, okay, the first step is I broke it down in steps to kind of easier to digest
Yeah.
because I would, again, overload myself. And I started to just do it to the point where I can do it consistently without much hesitation. Then I started to say, okay, what's the next thing? I want to open up and say it with more emotion. The next thing would be to not care if people said hi back to me, right? To be okay with it. And there were moments where I didn't really want to do it. These times like you want to go to the gym, but you can't be bothered, that kind of thing. I still had to go through it. Moments where people didn't say hi back to me 5 times in a row, I was pissed off. And all throughout that stuff, now if I say hi to someone, they usually say hi back. I found a way to be comfortable with myself. I don't need anything from them because I
Yeah.
no longer I'm interested if they say hi back to me. I'm doing it because I want to. And people could sense when I was doing it to get a response.
Amazing.
When someone says it to you intellectually, it's one thing to experience it and another thing to be in it and feel it. Like you said earlier, once you see it, you kind of see it. And now if someone doesn't say hi back to me, I'm laughing at it because I find it funny. They're having a bad mood or whatever. I don't take it
Right.
personally. But before, I did take it personally. And what I did at this time differently is I've done things like this before, trying to improve saying hi to women and complimenting them, talking to them. But I didn't document my experience. I didn't have a
Mm.
proper way to improve it, to go to where I want to go and to consistently, like a staircase, you go to the next step, you look at what's happening, you practice here a bit, and you go to the next step, you get comfortable, etc. After doing this, having my documentation, noting down the results, then going back and seeing what I want to change, what I don't want to change, I was like, okay. And at one point, I stopped doing it. And the reason I stopped doing it because I wanted to see if what I've learned was just like I would go back like a seminar high. You feel great. And 2 weeks later, you're back to it again. I stopped doing it for about a month. Every time I thought about saying hi to someone, it was if I never, let me say it, if I never stopped, it was the same as before. In my
Right.
mind, the perception of the whole thing changed because of the experience, not the intellectual thinking about it. Right. And this was the shifting point for me. It was the experience. not the actual thinking about it. Because when I go through it, I understand the lessons, I document them, I process it, I rest, I go again. And through doing that repetition, it changed my perception of it. And now I can literally say hi to anybody if I want to, people in a row, and I would not be very uncomfortable. Which is okay, you know. Um, but
Mm,
yeah, this is what I found. Like this is where my mind is at the moment.
that's so interesting that, in other words, you weren't stuck having to keep doing this thing. I The only reason this works is because I keep doing this. And
Mm,
I've disciplined myself. Anytime I encounter a person, I will say hi. And now you're trapped in a particular state. I love the experiment of saying, now I'm not going to do that.
yeah, yeah.
And now, do I change back to the way I was? Do I go back to the anxiety and all of that? Which is
Mm,
exactly what would happen if there had been no true insight.
mm, mm,
My really seeing a different world, a different understanding of who I am, my true nature, the nature of reality. And this will all sound theoretical, but it's literally something changes in how I see things. Then to say hi or not hi is not a big deal, right? It's fine. It's not a big deal. What was interesting in the experiment, you said, look, I can't get in. Don't be explaining to me who we are, our true nature, the nature of reality. I don't know what you're talking about. But in your life, you could experiment with this thing. And then you could say, see, I know I used to
mm,
feel this way. Now I don't feel this. That means something, right?
mm,
And then you stop the doing
mm,
and you go, well, did it really mean something? Or was it just because you're so disciplined and you're able to
mm,
keep doing this thing? I really think it was cool that you just stopped. And then later, you're kind of like, yeah, I could say hi to anybody. It,
mm,
there's nothing stopping me from saying hi. There's true insight there because
mm,
you're now seeing a different world. Before, there was something stopping you, and that thing was thought. It's not like you knew the thought. Um, But the evidence of the thought is there because you said,
yeah.
I would feel anxiety. I would feel like, well, you can't feel anything unless there's a thinking going on.
Mm, mm,
If I just say to myself, what am I choosing to believe? In this moment, what am I thinking that feels like this? What am I thinking that feels like this? They're going to think I'm an idiot.
mm,
If I say that and they reject me, I'll be nothing. So the thinking can be revealed. Normally, we're like, this is too scary. I'm not going to go past this.
mm, mhm. Yeah, and I like what you said about the evidence, having the evidence, because from that experience, and I would like to see what you think about it as well. I've realized something I never really saw by being around the principles. Although if someone made have said it to me, I've never really seen it. Before saying hi to anyone, before the first try ever, there was no evidence in my mind that I can do it confidently or comfortably. So my nervous system was going through, this is scary. I've never done it. The unknown. I don't know what was going to happen. The more I did it, the more I saw, hold on, there's nothing to be scared of here. Someone just ignored me. How did that feel? Not that bad. I documented it, go again. And through that experience and that evidence that gets connected to doing it, it's like, well, now if I think I'm going to say hi to this person, I goes through my mind, they could say nothing. They could say hi or whatever. I have the experience to know it. So it's not scary anymore because I've been through it. Right. And so when I
Mm,
stopped, that experience stayed with me. It didn't just vanish. It's because I've been through it, understood it. People say embodied, right? It's inside
yes.
of me, right?
Yes. Mm,
And it's, yeah, and it's what I was going to say. But yeah, so that's what I wanted to say that evidence part, I think is very crucial, because before I try to always, I'm like a very analytical person. I like to analyze things and pick things. But there came to a point where I was trying to think, like you said, what am I believing to be true that's causing me to feel this way? I got stuck in a loop,
Yeah,
try
yeah,
to figure it out.
yeah.
So I was like, you know what? What if I take action? What would happen? Again, the experiment part of it, and just stepping into and see what happens. And eventually I was like, oh, this actually changed how I see things by doing it. But like, in your words, how does the evidence come into play? What I'm asking myself is, what is the only way to get a true insight, or the multiple? Like for me was the action, going
Right,
through
right.
it, you know? And so for some people like Sydney Banks, he just had an insight out of the blue and changed his life completely. It's not the same person.
Yeah.
So that's the thinking.
It's interesting with Sid and also with Abraham Hicks. Sid eventually came to a state
Mm,
of saying, stop talking about all this stuff and go live life. He got frustrated because he's teaching it, sharing it, and people keep talking about it. And then he's
right, right,
like,
right.
stop talking about this stuff and go live your life. Then Abraham says, we are all making too much of all of this. Life is supposed to be fun. The purpose of life is joy. It's inescapable. It's the truth
Mm,
of who you are, the nature of reality, your true nature. You will not be able to avoid it.
mm,
You can get into a loop avoiding it.
mm,
I'm going to avoid it. I'm just going to think about it. There's no way I'm going to do that until I think it through.
mm,
And
mm,
so
mm,
you can literally avoid it. Um, but you can't avoid living, because living is always true. Your living is always truth. There's something else you said that I'll speak to as well. Just checking in if you heard anything of what I said that triggered anything for you.
the living. I've heard of that, and the loops, what you said, I've been in many,
Yeah.
many loops. Yeah. And, you know, even having coaching and all that stuff, I could not escape the damn loops, stuck in it. It felt like it was not breakable at some points. I was like, man, I've done all this and tried many things and nothing stuck. Had some very nice feelings, but that things that I thought were actual insights, but then 2 weeks later they're gone. So I was like, what makes it stick? These
Yeah.
questions I asked myself, and I was like, what I tried to do before, trying to think my way into it, trying to think and listen and all that stuff, it didn't work for me. So I'm gonna try something else. And when I went to, because I have the intellectual understanding of it, I could use it to do something with it, to go and live my life in a certain way that maybe can expose me to it. And I think that for me, saying hi to people did that, you know, and now I can take that. If I feel something, I don't even analyze why I feel something. If I want to change how I feel about a certain situation, for example, expressing myself in front of a group of people, I know what I did with saying hi to people. I know I can change the same thing. I need to have a plan. What do I want it, what to look like? And then take steps towards it.
The emphasis on what do I want gets you out of a loop,
Mm,
because part of the issue is when you're want to express yourself in front of people, but I'm nervous.
mm,
What's causing that? It, it's probably in my past. It was probably something that, so what the hell are you doing? See, well, I'm trying to get to the bottom of
yeah,
this, right?
mm, mm,
And so you're like innocently not noticing, but I've just gone completely opposite to what started the whole thing. Life is always perfectly showing you like what's next. And you could feel it like desire. It's interesting because this is where you can trust life, trust wisdom. It's sort of like there's a soul that is you, that is unlimited, living through you, right? It kind of walks down the street with you.
mm,
And it wants to say hi to people. It wants to have a great day. Then there's the you focused you. Or kind of like, yeah, but what are they going to think or whatever. And the soul part of you is like, listen, life is short. The hell are you thinking about?
Mm,
Go say hi to people. Now, and say for me, that wouldn't happen. Let's say for me, walk down the street, I'm not even thinking about that. My purpose, my intention, my unique perspective is different than
mm,
right? So for me, I don't see what's the issue with this? This isn't an issue. I just walk down the street, mind my own business, and like you have different intention, different. Like you could
mm,
say your soul lives as you wants your thriving for a joyful life experience. Well, we don't need to figure out what it is, but obviously there's something in that joyful life experience that is about interacting with others. It's about getting into relationship. It's
mm,
about expressing yourself powerfully and fully and
mm,
unrestricted. So there's something for you that is about
mm,
which you were somehow resisting and stopping.
mhm.
You don't know why, but you were.
Right. I
And
see.
and again, it's because of whatever your life experience, why there were conclusions you made and thinking you made, and then it started to stop. When you walk down the street, that doesn't feel good to you. You feel like you're being shy and hidden, and others are judging you. And from your soul's perspective, it's not what's going on.
Mm,
But you say it's what's going on. You're experiencing it like that. So what happens is for you, you feel like this desire. I want to be able to say hi. Well, you didn't just make that up randomly.
mm,
It arises because in your life unfolding, it's important. There's
mm,
something about that with relationship and expressing yourself freely, which is important. When you get into those situations, you feel the restriction. And
yeah.
so what most of us do is, why am I so restricted? Why do I feel like this? You can see you're it's complete opposite direction.
Mm,
That's the key because your soul is over there saying, this is
right.
what you want. And when you say, what do I want? Now you are looking in the direction of your soul as opposed to, why am I not doing that? Why am I not getting what I want? That's the
Mm,
opposite direction.
right. Mm. That's very interesting. And I find it true in my experience because that's exactly what I did. I'm looking back and like, yeah, I'm going to try go back, but to go forwards, and it never
Right.
worked, never stuck. And the way you put it is quite interesting. Never heard it put that way before. I never even thought about it that way. But it's true. Like for you, that desire to say hi to people wouldn't be there. But for me, it was because I wanted to do it. It wasn't something of I need to do it to prove anything. I want to
Right.
be able to do it. And there's other things I want to be able to do.
Yeah.
Mm,
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It ties into wisdom,
Mm.
right? It's another way to say wisdom, I think, from what you say. That's what I'm hearing. Mm,
When we look back to what you said, you can see how wisdom guided you. Like,
yeah.
what are you doing reading this stuff? Why are you talking to all these coaches? What
Mm,
for you in your unique perspective? You need to just be living. And then because it knows the path that's easiest, most accessible for you. It's the most enjoyable path. It says, can you just go out and walk for a little bit? It's just try this because you're not going to see anything by reading it, right? So for you, it pushes that direction,
mm,
which then creates that desire. And you say, then I come and I write it down and I do whatever. See, so it's nudging, it's a wisdom
mm, mm.
unique to you.
Yeah. And what you said, a thought came into my head, which is playing the game of life, really, you know. Uh, yeah, rather than trying to think about how to play the game of life. Just play the damn game, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Imagine trying to ride a bike, talk to people, do coaching conversations,
Mm.
read the latest. There's YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm.
So I really want to ride a bike. Isn't it great to know the simplicity of it? That anything you want is shown, revealed to you. Like, I want to ride a bike is like, well, go do that and it'll be shown to you.
Mm.
If you desire that, then go do that.
Mm.
In a way, it's like there is no secret being kept in the entire universe. There is no secret you keep from yourself. Anything you ask, you will answer. But as Abraham would say, we cannot answer a question that is not being asked. Be-
Mm.
Could you imagine if your soul was to give you everything it knows? The hell would you do with that? What you do with it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you would be. Yeah, I don't even know what would
I
happen.
don't know what you would do. They would all be noise and nonsense.
Yeah.
Most of it would just be noise and nonsense.
Mm. Yeah.
It, without the ask.
Mm. A friend of mine could say my mentor teacher in the career I've chosen trading for me a lot. He said, always ask questions. The more you ask questions, the more answers you can get, the better you can become. Most of the questions come to our mind when I'm trying to go sleep. I'm trying to go sleep, and then the question I write it on my phone. The next day I think about it, and something new comes out, and I'm thinking, where does this come from? By asking the question, and I sit in that space, which happens when I'm trying to sleep. It comes to my mind. I note it down, and it's a feeling, and it just guides me. The more I become aware of it, the better. But again, without the question, what am I looking for?
But yeah, that
Like you said earlier, what's the focus? What is the desire? If I don't ask the question, what do I actually want? Why am I hitting this way? I wouldn't know. Yeah.
imagine you wake up in the morning and this answer comes, but you weren't asking a question.
What is that? Yeah.
What is that? It's interesting, I guess. Anyway, you weren't asking a question.
Yes.
So every morning this thing comes. I don't know what it is. Kind of odd hitting this stuff, right?
Mm,
It has nothing to sit in. It has no context.
mm,
It,
yeah, that is true.
I, I like what you said in the sleep too, because sleep is one state where we could say our personal mind is quiet. So, Kassid and others distinguish between personal mind and the universal mind, or we could say your personal thinking, personal mind
Mm,
versus the broader perspective, which is more the wisdom. The answers are all in that wisdom because it's an infinite, all knowing intelligence. You could not form a question that is not known. We're not intelligent enough to form a question to which there wouldn't be an answer for
mm,
because we could only form the question from our known, right?
mm,
Because that the question cannot arise within you if there is not the answer for it.
mm,
Both sides are happening together.
mm,
As the question is formed, it is forming an answer.
mm,
This is where I find Abraham's teaching useful. They say these are two entirely different thinking processes. When you are asking a question, you are not a match to the answer. It's not because you're you feel like you're a bad, wrong person. It's because they're entirely different places. Your life experience forms a question,
Mm,
causes a question to be asked. And as Abraham will say, when you ask, it is given, which is what we just said about you couldn't possibly ask the question without the answer there. So, the Abraham teaching, when you ask, it is given, those two happen simultaneously. People go, well, how? It's kind of like if you imagine what we have technology wise is a calculator,
mm,
you can't punch in your question without the answer coming.
mm,
It's now there is actually a lag. You have to punch it into the right. There is a lag, but in the true thing, right? When you ask, it is given at the same time. So when you ask, your broader perspective has answered it.
mm,
But the level of consciousness and thinking that asked the question is a personal thinking that formed question. That is not that is not the level of thinking and consciousness that has an answer.
mm,
So the answer is in a different level of consciousness. The answer is in the quiet of this personal thinking that formed the question. That's where the answer lies.
mm,
When you go to sleep, this is quiet.
mm.
The answer is there. Now the trick is, when you wake up in the morning, and because here's what happens when you wake up in the morning. So there was like, I've got a problem. I don't know what to do about it. And this is really worrying me. So there's an asking. This has been going on for a while. I could be in big trouble unless I solve this thing. So there's an asking happening, right? So then you go to sleep, all of that settles. You're like most of us, what happens is then I wake up the next morning into a blank page of nothing.
Mm,
And as I enter, I go, what was I worrying about yesterday? Oh, yes, I remember. Oh, my thinking. All of the thinking comes rushing right back. Yes,
mm,
this is a big problem. I need to get on this.
mm,
This is what.
mm. Yeah, I mean, that hit like it hit something in me because when I'm having a stressful day, I don't know the answer to something and I'm panicking about it. Throughout the day, I'm trying to figure out. And every time when I go to sleep, as I'm in my bed trying to go to sleep, just answers coming back to back to back to back and ideas. And I note them down. And like you said, the next morning, a blank slate, I'm like, hold on, what was the problem again? Oh, yeah, yeah, okay. I know. And then I have to check my notes. So I know what I need to do. And usually that helps with the problem, you know? It's like, yeah, that is very true. Very true. Yeah, man.
Now, it's interesting, right? That's the kind of experience, knowing that this is where life experience teaches us, like what everybody else is blathering on about quiet mind and your wisdom.
Mm,
So the life experience teaches. One of the things they say, this I think relates to where you started, what something you asked when we started. You now know during the course of the day when I'm really stuck on something and worrying about it or whatever it is. It's interesting. This is a big change for me in my work, which is still not over because I still think if I just push a little more, Or there's some things that you do have to learn. Like, so there's a lingering something still there. However, from this conversation we get, what we say is, oh, so wait a minute. So when I'm in that state, there's no answer. There's no possibility of an answer. You
Mm,
can't have an answer because it's inaccessible in that state.
mm, yeah. It's similar with the saying hi for me. The experience, there's nothing bad about it. It's not as big of a deal as I made it out to be. It doesn't matter the traumatic experience in my past that caused me to feel like that in the first place. What matters is the experience that I have now, which I've shifted from. I want to be able to see. I literally, there was a point where I was saying hi to people. I was like, I want to get people to not say anything to me. I want to feel what that feels like. I want to feel what
Amazing.
this thing is that I'm so afraid of. And I was open to seeing that it's not that scary. I wanted to see that the question of, is it that scary? And going out and trying to find evidence through action that it's not. And when I did that, I was like, you can't make me go back and be scared of saying hi
You
to
can.
someone. It doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where you used a word early on where you said embodied.
Mm,
And I love that you brought it back to this because um, there's this misunderstanding around, no, but you're bypassing the stuff that happened to you. Like
mm,
something happened to you before. It was traumatic. And then people talk about things like this isn't your thinking, it's in your nervous system.
mm,
It's literally in your nervous system. And some people will even say, like, the DNA, you've got ancestral trauma. Forget your own.
mm,
If
mm. Wow.
if you want to start analyzing, if you run out of things to analyze in your own life, you even have ancestral trauma. You're from Bulgaria, whatever. You know how many bad things happen? It
Mm,
makes so there's even that stuff, and it's in your DNA, and you're basically screwed. There's something that people talk about that speaks to this. Your experience showed you could turn around and walk in the next direction. But
mm,
people will try to convince you that's not true. That's bypassing. You are bypassing that there was trauma. And unless you deal with it, it will
mm,
sit there sneaky. Here's the truth. And what Sid, in his experience, is an example of is your nervous system, your physical body is like the front of the hand, back of the hand of your energetic body.
mm,
Your physical body is not divided from this. So when people say the trauma is stuck physically, stuck would be perpetuated over time. So my reflection is stuck in the mirror.
mm,
If I stand in front of it with a frown, it would appear to be stuck. But when you start to notice that if you smile, it smiles
mm, mm,
all the time, right? Then you start to see that the body is always a perfect reflection
mm,
of your spiritual, energetic body.
mm,
You, in your experience with that insight, something changed
mm.
and the nervous system must
Changed.
match it.
Yeah. Mm, yeah. And it's the same with the previous conversation we had about building strength. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. Because when someone says, I'm so weak, well, you believe that. So what do you expect you're going to feel strong? It doesn't make any sense. It's just not congruent, me feeling weak and me being strong. It doesn't make logical sense. It doesn't match. And even people listening to this, they can do an experiment. Think of an exercise, anything. I say push up and think, how many could you do? If I ask you, can you do 50? Oh, no, I can't do that. And there's a certain perceived difficulty to the actual physical ability to do it. And through training and trying to improve it mentally, it became easier. So my body literally reflected that. That's
Mm.
all there is to it. There's no, I was thinking for a while, like, how do you simplify it? So it's emotional, but as well as physical. I think it was you who told me you heard of someone drinking poison and not being poisoned, which is insane. Like,
There's
crazy.
spiritual people who have,
Crazy. It's
they just
fascinating
grab it.
to me. Yeah, drink it. It's incredible.
We don't recommend it because it because because that takes a level
Yeah.
of pure knowing, right? Of your
Mhm.
energetic state, not physical, like that.
Mm.
But who the hell is in a state like that to be in such a state where that's the case, right?
Yeah.
And I shared with you that very humorous where Abraham Hicks was asked that question at the posts, and someone sat in the chair and said, Abraham, is it true that if I'm in alignment with my inner being, that I
Mm.
could drink poison and it would not affect me? And Abraham said, what's true is if you are in alignment with your inner being, you will never be inspired to drink poison.
Yeah, that would be foolish.
You're trying to become
Mm.
you're trying to do this thing that's
Mm.
just not aligned with your wisdom.
Yeah.
You're trying to do something.
Mm.
Uh,
Mm.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I really
Yeah,
so
I
glad we
agree.
reconnected and
Yeah,
uh, we're able to have this part two next conversation.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And I look forward to our ongoing connection. Something else will arise, I'm sure of it, as
Mm.
we keep moving forward.
Certainly.
Well, wonderful. Till we talk again.